on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you are with us tonight. As we navigate these uncertain times, tonight we are focusing on education. There are so many children who are out of school. This is impacting parents, of course. It's impacting students, teachers. Where do we go from here? What does this mean? And we're very happy to have with us via Zoom. So we're doing this again, social distancing via Zoom. We have the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Education, Dr. Penny Schwinn. Dr. Schwinn, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, first question. I have two kids. They're out of school. They're in Davidson County. They're out of school. Will the days that are being missed now, and these are substantial numbers of days, obviously, will they have to be made up?
So the answer is no. All schools have, or districts have, what we call stockpile days, and those are days that are saved up. Certainly in Metro Nashville and Davidson County, with extreme weather, tornadoes, and now with COVID, those stockpile days are gone. And so what we've done at the department is we've issued what's called a blanket waiver for all districts across the state. And that gives districts the ability to make decisions that are best for their local communities. Certainly this time of closure to ensure our children are safe and healthy is a reason why our school buildings aren't open. And so children will not have to make up days. That being said, when we have school building closure, we certainly are encouraging all of our districts to provide academic opportunities for students at home. And that looks like a lot of different things across the state. And there have been some pretty phenomenal examples of teachers and principals and district officials getting very creative so that instruction is maximized during this time of closure.
So I encourage people to call in. Of course, this is a great opportunity to call in to speak one-on-one with the Commissioner of the Department of Education. Some questions that just immediately come to mind for me is, what about seniors? I mean, what about children, students who are about to graduate? How are they going to get the required courses in the short amount of time they may have back in school, if they even go back to school?
Yeah, when we think about the full spectrum of our public schools and we think about pre-K through 12th grade, seniors hit close to home just because we all know how special those memories are. Certainly it's your last year of academic instruction in high school, and you also have things like prom and graduation, and so we're being very cognizant of that. For the academic component, what we are doing is we're working closely with the State Board on graduation requirements. The State Board has now called an emergency meeting that will take place on April 9th. And during that time, we will be able to present policy. The board will vote on that policy that will give clear direction to our districts and our schools around graduation requirements and things that seniors in their second semester will need to do to ensure that they can continue. The goal is to make sure that no student is adversely impacted because of measures we have to take as a state to ensure that everyone is safe and healthy. So the State Board meeting again is on April 9th. At that time, there will be clear direction on what to do moving forward, with the ultimate goal that no student is impacted in a negative way. That being said, we've heard some really creative examples across the state, some districts who are ensuring and working very hard to find ways to ensure that those special moments aren't missed. So we've heard things like, summer prom and graduation over the summer. We know those are really important, and we don't want to minimize that or forget about those experiences that our seniors are entitled to and very excited for. So again, we're going to be working closely with districts, not just on graduation requirements, but also on the coursework that our students are missing and some of those special moments that we know are going to be very, very important to our high schoolers.
Well, you're right. It is a double-edged component, especially with seniors. There's all the social side that is so memorable and so important, and then there's also the academic side. And it sounds like a lot of this is still being determined. So there's going to be this meeting where some of those things will be determined, but there's still a lot. I mean, this is so unprecedented. Kind of what are the challenges that you are facing right now there with the state, dealing with every school district across the state? What are some of the challenges you're facing?
I think the biggest challenge is just that we have 147 different districts, all with very unique local needs, and everyone navigating, as you said, an unprecedented situation all at the same time. And so as a state, we have two responsibilities. First is to ensure that we are continuing and maintaining the same services and supports that we provide on a regular basis every day. And at the same time, we are operating essentially a completely new part of our agency, which is how do we respond to a pandemic crisis that's impacting the entire state, impacting in different ways, and making sure that the supports we provide really target local communities as they are needed. We're doing a number of things to address that. Right now, we have 3 times a week calls with our superintendents, statewide calls to provide updates to information, answer questions. All of the FAQs on that are posted on our website. And I'll say the website a couple of times, but it's tn.gov/education. On that site, there are a number of resources. There's resources on closure, there's frequently asked questions, there's toolkits for districts, schools, and families to use to figure out what resources are available, a number of waivers that we've submitted to the Federal Department of Education to provide as much flexibility so we can address this unprecedented situation. But at the core of it is we are a state and a country where we are used to maybe a few days up to a couple of weeks potentially of interrupted instruction. This is something very different. This is every district across the state needing to pull together at a local level and at a state level and figure out how do we ensure when our children are at home and not with us, how do we make sure that they are getting regular meals? Many of our students rely on our free and reduced price meals at school, and how do we ensure they continue to get academic instruction? Those are the 2 big problems that we're trying to solve as a state and trying to make sure we're addressing that with the local needs in mind. And so it is certainly fast-paced work. The information is constantly changing, but we are so grateful to our district leadership, our principals, and our teachers who've been creative, innovative, and full of energy to make sure kids get what they are entitled to, what they deserve.
So you said they're not going to have to make up these days at this point. They're not going to have to make up. Davidson County, here in Davidson County, which is my point of reference, they just extended the amount of time that schools are closed. It was, I believe, a 2-week period. Now it's much longer, up until later in April, and I don't have the exact day in front of me. Schools close, they're scheduled to close maybe a month after that. So a question that I keep hearing is there a thought, okay, maybe they don't have to make up all the days. Is there a thought about school going beyond the date that it was planned on closing? What about that possibility?
Yes, so the governor announced yesterday strong encouragement for all districts to close through April 24th. As of this point, what we know is that all districts are planning to be closed through that time. We have a number of districts who have extended beyond that proactively. And so we do know that should schools reopen in May, there are a few weeks left. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did to know when schools would reopen. In terms of whether or not that would extend into the summer or add days on the back end of the calendar, that's absolutely a local decision. We wouldn't mandate that at the state level for a couple of reasons. There's local contracts with teachers and staff. There's also considerations related to funding. The BEP, or our funding formula for public schools that comes from the state, that is really measured on a certain number of days. And right now, that is till the end of the year. To extend that would require additional funding. I do think that's going to be a robust conversation that we're going to need to have when the legislature comes back into session. They're scheduled to come back in June. And I know that I'm hearing from districts, I hear from them every single day, email, calls, texts, saying, what does that funding look like and how will we be able to either add days this year or certainly think about what that might look like for next year as we try to make sure that any lost instruction is that students have the opportunity to have remediation, to have catch-up time, and to have those minutes made up so that they are positioned just as strongly as the kids that came before them, and certainly the students that will come after them. And so we're really thinking about that, collecting information, and certainly we'll have a pretty robust amount of information to provide to the legislature to engage in that conversation about what we need as an education system.
How likely is it, and you said you don't have a crystal ball, but how likely is it that kids won't go back to school this year?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. My older daughter asked me that this morning. She desperately misses her teacher and her friends. So the parent in me, my heart breaks a little bit as much as it does as commissioner. And I will tell you the same thing I told her, which was, we're taking it day by day and week by week and at this point, month by month. The most important thing is to ensure that all of our children are safe and that they are healthy. And my job as a parent is the same as commissioner, and that's to ensure that the 975,000 students who are in the state, that the number one thing is that they remain safe and healthy. And so at this point, we know that those closures extending into April 24th will allow us to maximize that level of safety for students and for staff, teachers, principals, support staff, et cetera, in our schools. We might need to extend beyond that, and we might be able to reopen beyond that. I know the Department of Health, the state, and partners associated with that are monitoring COVID quite closely, looking at what those trends are, and we are in very, very close touch with all of those agencies. So it's a little bit of hurry up and wait. As commissioner, my responsibility is to ensure that regardless of what happens, whatever decision is made and whatever the trajectory is, that we are ready to execute. So we are certainly planning for a reopen date immediately after April 24th. And we are also planning for extended closures. We will have resources available regardless of what pathway we take. But we are impatient to know that information just like everybody else.
You said the governor has recommended through April 24th that they're closed. You said recommended. So does that ultimately the power is with each county, with each school board? And let's say a school board on April 17th wants to reopen. In other words, before April 24th. Or let's say the governor after April 24th recommends that schools stay closed even longer. Could a local district go against that recommendation and either open before April 24th, or should that date be extended by the governor, open even though he said we recommend that they stay closed?
Yeah, so given how, we have such a diverse state, I think that we want to make sure that we are acknowledging and validating that every local community is going to be slightly different, especially when we're talking about something as broad and as constantly changing as we've seen COVID and the coronavirus be. So at this point, the governor is strongly encouraging the closures through April 24th. Certainly at a local level, other decisions could be made. What we are seeing more is that districts are extending the closure period as opposed to keeping it shorter. And that's because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that our children are safe. I don't think anyone, and I can't imagine any superintendent or any district leader wanting to put any risk there. So we are in constant conversations with our superintendents and with TOS, which is the agency that represents our superintendents, to hear what are they hearing, what are they thinking, what are their conversations with local boards, so that we can have that information to inform our decisions at the state level just as much as the health information coming in. So certainly what we've seen is that districts have complied with the April 24th strong recommendation, and we will continue to partner with them to figure out what that looks like moving forward as proactively as possible. We know that families need to plan. We know that certainly districts and schools need to plan, and we're all anxious to get that information. So that's what we're seeing right now. I think as we get closer and further into April, we'll be able to have more information about whether or not those districts will remain closed. And again, as I said, many districts are preparing for full school year closures just so that they are ready regardless of what happens. But at this point, like I said, we're taking it week by week, and we're hoping that the stay at home and safe at home measures that many of our local communities are taking will have a positive impact and allow us to get back into schools, and where I know we just miss those kiddos so much. So we will take it day by day.
You said some districts are preparing. I mean, it would make sense to prepare for the possibility that you're not going to go back in. Hopefully, as you said, that happens. Hopefully, you do get to go back to school April 24th. But I guess I ask about seniors, how do we deal with graduation? But let's say you have a third grader, and if you're preparing for this possibility that they don't go back in this year, how do you advance third graders to the fourth grade and so on? As you're talking about what to do if you don't go back this school year, what do you do about the fact that students will have missed a huge amount of time? Do you advance them? Do you do a do-over? What do you do?
Yeah, and I'll take it as commissioner and as a parent. I've got a second grader at home, and she's missing a tremendous amount of school. And look, she's got two educator parents, and in that way very lucky, but two educator parents who are both working, and trying to balance an at-home education and their full-time jobs. And so I think when I think about her as a rising second grader going into third grade, I am thinking about the weeks of education that she's missing with her teacher, especially when we think about those younger students. And I can't underscore this enough. Days missed in those critical early grades of kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, when children are learning to read. It's not a day for day or hour for hour exchange. Every day they miss has a substantially bigger impact on their long-term education, and it takes more time to make up, especially for our kids learning to read. Over the last several months as a department, we've been talking a lot about literacy in particular. Right now across the state, we have about a 36% proficiency rate. That means about 36% of our third graders are reading on grade level. And so we know we have a lot of work to do even before all of the school closures. Knowing how much time our students are missing going into the next grade and knowing how much we want to work specifically in this literacy space, we are spending a lot of energy at the department, having conversations, looking at the research, talking to experts about what it will take to ensure that our students who are missing school now, especially in elementary school, how much it will take to get them caught back up to where they would have been should school not have closed, and to continue to advance them forward so we see greater levels of proficiency in reading. That is definitely something that we will be bringing up when the legislature comes back into session. I was so encouraged and excited by how much energy I saw in our elected officials. Everyone is rallying around this idea about wanting to improve literacy across our state. And when I think about the time missed, I think now could not be more critical of an opportunity for us as a state to come together, not just to bring our kids up to where they would have been as a result of the school closures, but also to really say now is a moment in time where we can double down, triple down, quadruple down on literacy and make sure that no minutes are lost and all of our kids are progressing as we would want them to. But it is a real concern, and it's something we will have to address next year should the school closures remain, and frankly even if we come back in May. That is time that we will need to make up and be very creative as a broader school community to do that.
Wow. Okay. All right. We are talking with Dr. Penny Schwinn, the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Education, via Zoom. Thank you for being with us. That kind of sets the table. Now I want to encourage you to call in. Call in with your questions, whatever they may be, for the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Education. We will take a break. Come back with your questions right after this.